Hello, this week I'm going to talk a bit about water brushes. This is perhaps one of the most useful tools that I have in my bag of sketching tools. And basically a water brush is a type of brush that holds water in the handle, see it sloshing around there, and allows it to trickle through to the brush at the other end. And you can, by gently squeezing the handle, force a bit more water through to make it wetter. So a really useful thing because it allows you to go out sketching with your travel set and not have to balance any pots of water on the corner of your sketchbook, which is always a bit precarious. So the basic idea is that you give it a gentle squeeze as you dip your brush into the paint, do any mixing you need to do, and then you can paint with it. And if you need to do a wash that fades out, you can squeeze a bit more water through till eventually it goes clear. And that's how you clean it as well. You can just give it a slight squeeze into a tissue or on your trouser leg, and then it's clean and clear, ready to go for a new colour. So I've been using one of these Pentel ones. This is the broad size. This is as big as they come from the Pentel ones. For the last one lasted me over 15 years, which I think is really good going for such a cheap tool. But over the years I did try a few different brands out just to make sure that I was using the best one for me. So those were, I found one from Derwent, which feels quite high quality, a bit more solid than the Pentel maybe, but takes a bit more force to squeeze the handle. And this one I was interested in because it had a square tip. So it's got a square brush. Just get a bit of paint on there, which allows you to get some thicker strokes in one direction and thinner strokes the other direction, which I thought might be useful, but actually I ended up not using it so much. I think if you're doing gouache paintings or something, then a square brush might be more useful or something than watercolour is more about thin washes, isn't it, I think, generally. And also I found that these bristles were just a bit too short. They're about half the length of the Pentel. And I think if you're going to use a brush, you may as well have a nice squishy brush with a nice length to it. So that's just a bit too short and stumpy. So not my favourite one, that one. I found a very cheap and cheerful set of them, which included a really big square brush, so you can hold plenty of water in there. It does feel quite cheap. It's what some non-branded something or other. And it works fine, but the brush quality isn't as good as with the Pentel or the Derwent. It just doesn't hold its point quite so well, and yeah, it just generally feels a little bit cheap, cheap and nasty. At the other end of the scale, there's a very fancy Caran one, which I found, which has a very similar point to the broad Pentel. Keeps its point nicely, but where it differs is the other end here. So we've got a rubber area with a button for squeezing. If you want more water, you squeeze this little rubber thing, which seems to work quite nicely. And then to fill it, you've got a sort of plunger, like a syringe, so you can draw the water up with it, which means it will hold quite a lot of water, which would be useful. But I wonder if that is perhaps overcomplicating things slightly. I wonder if it will last as long as the good old Pentel, because it's just much more complicated with moving parts. But yeah, still a very nice tool. I will definitely be using that one because it has a nice tip. So I use these for almost all of my sketching. So most of my sketching, watercolour sketches, are mainly about the pencil sketch, and then I add some sort of very light washes to it. So for this kind of light washes, the water brush works just perfectly fine. It's just a nice tool for that kind of thing. If you're doing really big areas of watercolour, then they might struggle a bit, but for sketchbook work, I think it's just perfect. Ooh, there's one last thing that I forgot to mention, was you don't have to fill these with just with water. So this one's been filled with diluted black ink. So it makes a very good sort of affordable and refillable ink pen, sort of brush pen. You can buy them sort of disposable ones, I suppose, but that's not so good, is it? So you can put coloured inks in there, or washes, or whatever you fancy, whatever you like to draw with, you can fill it with that. A really useful thing. Not just for adding water to watercolours. Yeah, hope you found that interesting, and let me know in the comments if there's one I've missed out that you think is really good. and I'll see you for another film soon.